quiet in the fairy-light plains that night, the kind of silence that only existed when the stars were watching. A dome of soft indigo stretched overhead, scattered with gentle constellations. The world felt held, like it was waiting for something. In the heart of a moss-lined grove, sheltered by tall mushroom stalks and gently glowing flowers, a single egg sat nestled in soft silk and feathers. Pale cream with a faint shimmer, it pulsed slowly with warmth. Lucifer paced nearby, fingers clutched tight around a stitched cloth, his usual energy tempered into something fragile. Cross, sitting beside the nest, was stone still except for the way his eyes flicked towards every little sound. Then, the first crack. Lucifer froze, Cross leaned closer. Another crack. A tremble. The egg rocked gently as a small chip flaked off and vanished into the grass. Then the egg gave way all at once, not explosively, but as though it had simply chosen to open. Inside, curled up and blinking in confusion, was a baby Evie. She was small, soft-furred, and otherwise ordinary, save for the eyes that met theirs. Wide, uncertain, and a soft, glowing pink, like stardust caught in dawn light. She didn't cry, not right away, just blinked up at them, ears twitching faintly. Then she let out a tiny hiccup of sound. Eh? And Lucifer's heart broke in the best possible way. He rushed forward. She's perfect. Cross exhaled a slow breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. She's ours. The Eevee squeaked again, stretching one paw towards them. Lucifer reached towards her without thinking, slow, reverent, like one might approach a sleeping dream. Her paw lifted, clumsily and trembling, reaching towards his outstretched fingers. The moment their touches met, the tiniest paw to the tip of his claw, a warmth sparked through him so deep it stole his breath. She wasn't just real, she was theirs. The little Eevee let out another breath, softer this time, and leaned towards the contact. Her eyes were still slightly unfocused, blinking up through long lashes, but she wasn't afraid, just curious, content, like she'd known them forever. Cross leaned in beside Lucifer. The usual hardness in his expression melted down into something almost fragile. He looked down at her wobbly ears, the uneven scruff of her chest fluff, and those impossibly pink eyes that caught the moonlight like polished crystal. She's already watching the sky, he murmured. Or maybe the sky's watching her, Lucifer said back, his voice cracking a little. The Eevee let out a soft chirp, then clumsily rolled onto her back with all four paws curled to her chest, exposing her little round belly. Her tail gave a single twitch, and she yawned, wide enough to show off two nubby fangs, and give a faint, fluttery sneeze that puffed Lucifer's hair up. He laughed through a choked breath and looked at Cross. She trusts us already. Cross nodded, eyes never leaving her. We'll never betray that. Very, very gently, Lucifer scooped her up in both hands, cradling her against his chest. She squirmed for only a second before melting into his warmth, her tiny heartbeat fluttering against his. Her ear flopped against his arm, and he swore he felt her sigh. Cross reached forward and brushed a single finger across her forehead, pushing a tuft of fur out of her eyes. Welcome home, little one. She blinked once, twice, then, slowly, she smiled. It wasn't a full expression, not yet, but there was something unmistakably gentle in her face, something that knew she was safe. The wind outside the grove had quieted, as if even nature dared not disturb the moment. The only sounds now were soft, the rustle of grass, the hum of the glowing mushrooms, and the little sighs from the newly hatched Eevee nestled in Lucifer's arms. She had fallen asleep quickly, still clinging to one of his fingers with her tiny paw. Her breaths were shallow and warm against his chest, rising and falling in rhythm with his own. Her ears twitched faintly with each shift of the breeze. Cross sat beside them, watching in reverent silence. His hammer lay forgotten at his side. For once, he didn't feel the need to stand guard or keep watch. His eyes, so often sharp with alertness, were soft, almost glowing themselves. She's warm, Lucive whispered, not taking his eyes off her. Not just from the egg. It's like she's full of warmth, like she's holding the light she hatched under. Cross reached over, and with uncharacteristic tenderness, cupped her back with a single hand, his thumb brushing down the curve of her spine. She gave a tiny hum, barely a squeak, and snuggled further into Lucive's fluff, completely trusting. She's going to be a heartbreaker, Cross said dryly, though there was no bite in his tone. Only if she doesn't break mine first, Lucive whispered with a teary laugh. He shifted, laying her gently into the moss-lined cradle that they'd woven together weeks ago. The nest was small, but wrapped in soft fabrics, glowing threads, and little charms Cross had carved from pale wood. They'd waited so long, preparing this space, wondering what kind of child would fill it. Now she was here, so small, so real. Cross draped a soft, petal-woven blanket over her, just barely enough to cover her, and the baby Evie instinctively pawed at it, wriggling a little before settling in. Her pink eyes fluttered open one last time, gazing up at the two faces above her. Lucive reached in, gently stroking her head between the ears. She doesn't know words yet, he murmured. But she knows us. She chose us, Cross corrected softly. The way she looked at you, like she knew exactly who you were. Lucive leaned his head against Cross's shoulder. And she's everything I didn't know I needed. They sat that way for a long time, watching her sleep, Cross's arm around Lucive, Lucive's hand resting near her paw, and Starlight dreaming beneath the moonlight. When the wind finally stirred again, it carried the scent of blooming flowers, night dew, and something new, something warm and growing. A new life, a new bond, a new beginning, and three hearts beating softly together. The world glittered. It always glittered here in the Fairylight Plains, but today it sparkled more, like someone had shaken stardust through the air. Little pollen motes drifted lazily through the breeze, and the mushrooms near the grove hummed quietly when she passed. Starlight's paws were light on the moss as she tiptoed out of the safe part of home, the part where Papa Cross said not to wander alone. But she wasn't alone. Mouse was with her. She looked over her shoulder at the little carved Tinkaton doll, tied securely into her leaf satchel. You better keep watch, Mouse. If Papa sees us out here, we're gonna have to do double bedtime. Mouse didn't reply, of course, but she imagined he nodded solemnly, hammer and all. They passed through a gap in the glowing reeds, under a low-hanging arch of twisted root and crystal, and into the part she called the quiet place. It was where the wind didn't talk as much, where the flowers didn't giggle when she brushed past. Here, the air felt still, and in the middle of it all, half hidden between mossy rocks and stardusted ferns, she saw it. A single stem, thin and delicate. At the top, wrapped tight like a secret, was a flower bud. It pulsed faintly, as if dreaming. She crept closer on her belly, fluff dragging over the grass, ears perked. She sniffed. It smelled like rain and silver and the softest part of bedtime stories. Moonflower, she whispered, just like the one Lucive has in his dream book. She reached out, then stopped. What if the flower wanted to bloom here? What if it was waiting for the right star? What if it was the kind of flower you weren't supposed to pick? She glanced at Mouse again. But it's not blooming yet, she reasoned out loud. It's just sleeping, and I'm really, really careful. I'll find it a good place to wake up, one where Lucive can see it and smile. That made it okay, right? Right, she said with a little nod. Gently, very gently, she wrapped her teeth around the stem and plucked it from the moss. It didn't cry, or flash, or sparkle in protest. It just rested in her mouth, soft and cool. Thank you, she whispered to the patch of ground, giving it a little nose boop in gratitude. I'll take care of it. She tucked the bud into her satchel beside Mouse, pat a little circle in the grass as a good luck gesture, and turned back towards home. Her paws were muddy, her satchel was full of pollen, her tail was tangled from the reeds, but her heart Her heart felt warm, because she knew Luciv would love it. Not because it was a moonflower, but because she had found it. And sometimes, finding a thing was a kind of love all its own. The moonflower bud sat nestled safely beside Mouse, wrapped in a twist of leaf and fuzz inside her satchel. It didn't glow, not yet, but she could feel it. A sort of sleepy warmth against her side, like it was still breathing gently. Starlight stepped lightly over roots and ducked beneath long strands of ribbon grass, the ones that always tried to tickle her nose. Her fur was dusted with pollen now, and her paws squished a little when she walked. But she didn't care. She had a gift, a real one, and Luciv was going to flip out. But the wind had changed. It wasn't scary, not really, but it was different. The quiet place was always quiet, but now the stillness felt heavier, like it was listening. Starlight slowed her steps, ears high. "Mouse?" she whispered. "Are you still back there?" She turned her head slightly, eyeing the open satchel flap. Mouse hadn't moved, obviously, but she took comfort from his presence anyway. She bumped her cheek gently against him. "We're okay," she said, maybe more for herself than him. Don't tell Papa, okay? We're not lost, we're just on an adventure." The path she'd taken in looked different now. Shadows stretched longer, and the glowing moss she used to mark her way had faded in the changing light. She turned in a circle once, then twice. She could feel her chest tighten a little. Then, flutter. A pale blue leaf drifted down ahead of her, twirling like a dancer, and landed right in front of her paw. She blinked. "I remember you," she said. "You came from the squishy log." Tail perking up, she scrambled forward, nose low to the ground, following the trail of familiar smells and oddly shaped pebbles she thought she recognized. Her ears twitched with every creak and flutter, but her pace picked up. The wind was changing again, lighter, warmer. She heard the faint sound of clinking metal, not sharp or scary, but rhythmic, familiar. Papa Cross's hammer. That meant home was close. The trees opened up at last, giving way to the brighter glade wrapped in soft moss and trailing light vines. She could see their camp just ahead, the stone ring where the cooking fire went, the basket of clean leaf blankets, and there, Luciv, sitting cross-legged beneath the lantern-flower tree, tongue out in full focus as he fiddled with some broken, petal-shaped thing in his lap. His back was turned, his hammer hand still for once. Starlight's heart leapt. She grinned, felt her paws buzz with the urge to go, and she bolted from the reeds. The wind was sweet with the scent of ripe berries and glowing moss, and the soft clicking of stones being arranged echoed through the glade. Luciv sat cross-legged beneath the lantern-flower tree, tongue peeking from the side of his mouth in concentration as he tried, for the third time, to repair the warped petal-shaped lantern Starlight had accidentally sat on earlier. He didn't mind, of course. She was at that age now, endlessly curious, limbs a bit too big for her body, always bouncing, tripping, and apologizing with wide, pink eyes and a nervous giggle. "Papa Luciv!" Speak of the little star. Starlight came barreling into view from between the tall, shimmering reeds, her fur puffed up with static and bits of dandelion fluff stuck to her ears. Her oversized paws left little prints in the glowing grass as she galloped straight towards him, breathless with excitement. "You'll never guess what I found!" Luciv smiled, putting his tools aside. "Tell me anyway." She skidded to a stop and flopped down onto his lap without warning, something she did more often now, as if it were her rightful spot. She looked up at him, face full of drama. "A moonflower! One that hasn't bloomed yet." "A real one?" Luciv asked, raising a brow. "Where?" "In the quiet place, you know. The one Papa says we can't go alone. But I didn't go alone, because Mouse came with me." Mouse, of course, was her favorite carved Tinkaton doll, worn, slightly chewed, and absolutely incapable of supervising. Luciv sighed. "Did Mouse also remember to tell you not to leave the inner grove?" "Maybe." He gave her a look, half stern, half amused, and poked her forehead. "You're lucky I love you." Starlight beamed. "I know." Then her expression softened. She wiggled out of his lap and turned around, reaching into the little leaf satchel strapped crookedly over her shoulder. She dug around with her mouth for a second before gently pulling something out with her teeth. She laid it carefully on the moss between them. It was a single, tightly curled moonflower bud, pale and faintly blue, like a tiny drop of starlight not yet opened. "I wanted to save the first bloom for you," she said softly. "You always say how much you like them." Luciv froze. His heart stuttered. She looked nervous now, ears folding down slightly. "You're not mad?" He didn't speak. He just leaned forward and scooped her up into his arms so tightly she squeaked. "Starlight," he whispered into her fur. "I'm not mad. I'm proud and so lucky. And I love you more than the moon loves the sky." Behind them, Cross had appeared with a berry bowl in one hand and an amused, crooked smile on his face. "Let me guess," he said, walking over. "She stole into the outer grove, got covered in pollen, and came back with a stolen flower for your sentimental collection?" "Yup," Luciv said without letting go of her. Starlight blinked up at Cross and opened her mouth. "I didn't steal it, I borrowed it." "Forever?" Cross asked. She paused, then nodded with great seriousness. "Forever." Cross huffed a laugh and bent down, pressing a kiss between her ears. "That's our girl." That night, after her bath, and a great deal of brushing out burrs and fluff, Starlight curled up between them, the moonflower bud in a little glass jar beside her mossy nest. She stared at it until her eyes grew heavy, her tail flicking slowly with contentment. And just before her breathing deepened into sleep, the bud unfurled. Silent, gentle, a soft glow pulsed from its petals, like it was blooming just for her. Luciv saw it first and whispered, "See? Even the flowers think you're made of starlight." The moon was high now, casting long, silver beams through the leaf-curtained windows of their burrow home. The glow moss along the walls pulsed softly, a dim lullaby of light, and the cricketots outside chirped like distant music boxes. Starlight let out a big yawn, her tiny jaws stretching wide as she flopped onto her mossy nest bed. Her fur was brushed, twice, actually, and she smelled faintly of flowers and honeyberry soap. A little burr still clung to her tail, but Cross hadn't the heart to pull it free. Not tonight. The moonflower bud sat in its little glass jar beside her bed, propped up carefully with soft padding and fairy silk thread. It hadn't opened yet, but it would. She could feel it. Just like it had waited in the quiet place, it was waiting again, for the right moment. Luciv knelt down beside her, fixing the blanket made of woven leaf fabric and feather lining. "Comfy?" he asked. Starlight nodded sleepily. "Mm-hmm." Cross appeared on the other side with a fresh-washed acorn cup of warm berry milk. "Here," he murmured, "for the starcatcher." She sat up just enough to sip from it, then leaned right into Luciv's side, eyes half-lidded. "You're not mad anymore, right?" Cross raised a brow. "Did I look mad?" She blinked at him. "Your eye twitched." Luciv snorted a laugh. Cross gave her the smallest smile. "You're sharp. You get that from me." "I think I get everything from you," she mumbled. "I just don't know how yet." Neither Tinkaton said anything for a moment. Luciv gently took the cup from her paws and set it aside. Cross leaned in, brushing her ear back with his hand. "You get your bravery from me," Cross said softly, "and your gentleness from Luciv." "And your heart," Luciv added, stroking her cheek. "That's all yours. Big enough to carry stars." Starlight smiled as her eyes closed. "You're not going to leave me, right?" she murmured, breath warm against Luciv's wrist. Cross lay down beside her, folding his arms so his head rested just at the edge of her nest. "We don't leave." "Even if you get sleepy?" "Especially if we get sleepy," Luciv whispered. "That's when we stay closest." They both watched her for a long moment as her breathing deepened. Her paw twitched once, her tail curled in. She murmured something into her blanket that sounded like, "Mouse?" And then, just as the final hush settled over the room, the moonflower bloomed. Silently, gently, its petals unfurled in the jar beside her bed, casting a soft white glow across her sleeping face. It pulsed like a heartbeat, Faint, slow, and perfectly in time with hers, Lucive reached out and touched the glass. Just once. Of course it bloomed for her, he whispered. Cross didn't reply. He just leaned closer, and together, they sat in the silver light, watching the tiny piece of starlight they'd been lucky enough to call their daughter.